Souls-like games don't need to be huge. Let's see what these small indie developers have been cooking up. Here are the top 10 free Souls-like games on Itchio you don't know about. Prison of Husks has you take control of a doll to escape out of a decrepit prison. You wake up with nothing but find a sword and various items hidden around the castle. Among these are equipable imprints like a fire sword which buffs your attack temporarily, or blood flasks that heal you. Combat is satisfying with a light attack, jump attack, and heavy attack depending on the situation. There's a block which, if timed correctly, fills your stamina meter plus a dodge to avoid attacks. The health system is a bit complex with a regenerating shield system that takes less damage when you have up to 3 armored hits active, rewarding defensive play. There's 2 challenging boss fights to figure out with some fodder enemies along the way. If you're looking for a Souls-like with excellent combat, then I recommend Prison of Husks. Tyrant's Realm Origins is a retro Souls-like where you fight through dungeons and collect loot. You start out naked with just your fists, but find loot as you progress in specific areas or drop from crates which reward exploration. There's 2 different weapons to find that handle differently from one another, and armor which gives you more health. There are a few different locations to explore, and you're equipped with 3 health flasks per area. In true Souls-like fashion, you have a stamina meter tied to your attacks and dodge roll. Attacks consist of a light attack and a heavy attack that knocks enemies away. There's a couple enemy types and a rewarding final boss fight that tests your skills. If you're looking for a clunky Souls-like with a retro aesthetic, then I recommend Tyrant's Realm Origins. Elden Ring Demake is a PS1 style adaptation of Elden Ring that has you fight in an open arena. Obviously it's not the entire game or anything, instead putting you in an impressive looking environment, pitting you against a boss and rabid dogs. There's no stamina meter, but you do have a dodge roll as well as a variety of attacks and the iconic flasks to recover health. The boss is a fair challenge with a few different attacks to learn, and determining which attacks of your own to use when is satisfying to figure out. If you're looking for a PS1 style Souls-like, then I recommend Elden Ring Demake. LEGO Dark Souls is a simple Souls-like made to look like the LEGO games. After an opening cutscene introducing the infamous Ornstein and Smough bosses from Dark Souls, you're pitted against them. There's an optional summon, but he's hellbent on running to his demise. At least he takes a few hits for you. Combat is as basic as it gets, with just an attack and dodge roll. The bosses are just as shallow, only having 1 attack each, making them easy to figure out. The game nails the LEGO aesthetic though, and I'd love to see an actual Souls-like LEGO game in my lifetime. If you're looking for an easy Souls-like, then I recommend LEGO Dark Souls. Itchio the Pixel Kishi is a 2D action Souls-like where you fight bosses as a sword-wielding warrior. There's no dodge roll or ways to avoid attacks besides moving around, so the focus is on the defensive parry. The bosses are very aggressive, forcing you into a defensive but quick playstyle as you frantically parry attacks while throwing in attacks of your own when you can. If you parry an enemy enough, their parry gauge will fill up, stunning them for a while. You're armed with a few health flasks and a fire attack that deals extra damage if you spot an opening for it. If you're looking for a fast-paced boss fight game focused on parrying, then I recommend Itchio the Pixel Kishi. Mine Souls 3 is a Dark Souls version of Minecraft where you fight through a fantasy-themed world while collecting loot. The world is super fun to explore as there's lots of verticality and variety of areas. The combat here is not that great since enemies only have 1 attack, but there are ranged and melee enemies to avoid. There's a few boss fights as well, but they suffer from the same issue. As you fight and explore, you'll find loot like new weapons you can equip, or special items to use like fire bombs you throw at enemies, for example. However, once you find the bow, there's not a lot of incentive to use other weapons since you can kill everything from a distance. Despite the disappointing combat, if you're looking for a beautiful world to explore that looks like Minecraft crossed with Dark Souls, then I recommend Mine Souls 3. Clay Knight is a boss fight game where you engage in battles with enemies made of clay. The combat is very similar to difficult Souls-likes, relying on proper timing and learning enemy attack patterns. You have a light attack and heavy attack as well as a dodge roll, but no block or parry here here, meaning spacing is particularly important. You also have a set amount of health flasks for each fight. There's only 2 bosses in the game, but they're both challenging, particularly the second one with his far-reaching wild attacks. If you're looking for a simple but challenging Souls-like, then I recommend Clay Knight. The Titan's Grave is a boss fight game where you play as a tiny warrior taking down a giant titan. You can move, dodge, and shoot arrows that automatically target the titan. Instead of a health system, there's a meter at the top. Every time you damage the boss, the red side fills up, and every time you take damage, the blue side fills up. Once you fill up the meter to win the fight, the boss transitions to the next phase. There's a total of 3 phases with a variety of attacks in each one. If you're looking for a boss fight game with simple controls, then I recommend the Titan's Grave. Untamed is a Soulsborne-inspired boss fight game with a focus on agile melee combat. There's an emphasis on combos depending on how you chain together your light and heavy attacks and dodge. This makes combat more offensive, especially since there's no block. Of course, you have to keep an eye on your stamina meter, which depletes every time you attack or dash.
Hello there.
The boss's attacks are on the more forgiving side of things as they have a relatively long build-up, allowing you to get more hits in before dashing away. If you're looking for an action Souls-like, then I recommend Untamed. Insanity Souls has you play as a girl with schizophrenia battling against the thoughts in her own head. These thoughts take the form of monsters at her parents' home and through doors to supernatural locations that require a certain amount of souls to access. A soul is obtained every time you kill an enemy, as well as item drops in the form of pills. These are used to heal or upgrade your health or stamina permanently. Both combat and platforming are pretty clunky, but enemies aren't that challenging and checkpoints are generous, so progression is constant. If you're looking for a story-driven horror combat game, then I recommend Insanity Souls. Those were the top 10 free Souls-like games on Itchio you didn't know about. I'll have my playlist of free Itchio games you don't know about linked in the description, as well as my video about free Souls-like games on Steam. Thanks for watching, give me money on Patreon, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with this ongoing series.